School is brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds. Steve, we've got some unbelievable weather in Ontario. A lot of farmers are getting, even though we're still in March, are getting pretty itchy and talking about maybe going out and putting some corn seed in the ground. What are some of the things that come to your mind in terms of seeding or planting corn this early?
Well, I would say we're probably, I'm going to say 3 weeks away before anybody gets really serious about planting corn once we get into that early April time frame. 2 years ago, we had a similar early start to the spring, and we were about the 15th of April when a lot of folks were starting to go, which at that point had been one of the earliest time frames that we had ever seen. So I would expect sort of a similar type of timing this year. So once we get past Easter, if the ground is fit, it'll be kind of open season. And that's probably the key parameter too, is that the ground is fit. I don't think soil temperature is going to be an issue. Typically you get in those early April time frames and we want to see where the soil temperature is at with a minimum of around 10 degrees Celsius. But this year I would say temperature may not be the issue. It'll be making sure the soil is good to go.
And so what are the characteristics of that soil being good to go?
We don't want to push it, but we don't want to see any smearing in the seed trench. We want the ground to work up nicely, be able to build a nice seed trench with the planter, that we get good placement with the seed, and to make sure that that seed can get off to a good start.
So when we are planting early, do we want to bump up that seeding rate, or can we hold it at our traditional levels?
Given where we're at today, I would say with seed treatments and where we're at in terms of the traits in the seed, but primarily the seed treatments in terms of getting it started, I wouldn't, and the fact that a lot of people have already been bumping up their seeding rates, I would say to the most part that we don't need to increase that population. It's a little bit different in soybeans. There you may want to bump up the population a little bit as we're going early, but even in the case with soybeans, the seed treatments are so good these days that it helps to protect that seed so that we can get off to a healthy start.
Now, we know that early planting can definitely provide some yield benefits when we get to harvest time, but there is a risk, right? We always have that replant risk, but this year we've got some different circumstances that maybe want to make you reconsider that sort of replant risk.
Yeah, I would say this year we're in a little different situation than a lot of other years from the standpoint that if you look across the industry in Canada, I would say most companies are going to tell you that they're fairly tight on seed. And that's a result of the seed production conditions, primarily in the U.S. a year ago. In Canada, we actually had very good conditions for planting. And as well in South America, the crop in Argentina probably came off a little lighter than expected. Chile was, I think, much closer to normal. So the seed supply is very tight going into the spring. A lot of producers, what I'm hearing across the board, a lot of producers have been asked maybe to plant their second choice of seed because the first choice is not available or sold out. And so as we head into the spring, seed supplies are going to be tight. So we want to make sure when we get that seed in the ground that we're in conditions that are conducive to a fast germination start. And if we can do that, we're going to reduce the odds of a replant situation. So, for example, if we know that seed is tight, if we know that the odds on having seed of a similar maturity or even the same hybrid are going to be low in terms of getting replacement seed or even the maturity underneath, if we're into a late planting situation, then, for example, if we're planting into good conditions, but the forecast, let's say, is going to turn really cold and wet that night, then that's a situation where we're going to say, okay, how much do we want in the ground versus waiting until that next window perhaps when we can get it off and going and we don't need to worry about replanting.
So with corn and planting early, are we, like we know that soybeans really is a benefit to planting early. With corn, are we better off to give ourselves a little bit more time to ensure the conditions are ideal, or just when you can go, you go?
I think if we're into that April time frame, particularly anytime past the 12th or the 15th, we're especially this year we're going to be past. We've got an early Easter. We're past Easter, and if we get into that time frame of mid-April, if the soil is fit, then it's time to go. And our experience has shown the last few years that we really can benefit from a yield perspective by getting that corn up and going fast.